Hello! Welcome to another episode of JayDHD Writing Lessons, a show where I am sharing my tips and tricks for writers with ADHD as an ADHD writer myself. I am not a doctor or any kind of medical professional, and nothing in this show is actual medically sanctioned advice, just things that I have learned through hard experience. In the description, there will be links to some organizations that have actual peer-reviewed information about ADHD. And as always, if at any point these videos become stressful to you, I recommend just clicking off and doing something to take care of yourself, or I have left mental health charity links in the description as well if you need more urgent help. Without further ado, let's get on with it, guys. So if you watched the first two episodes of this show, it's no secret that I have been struggling to make this video. And I've not been struggling because I don't have ideas for it. I think I almost have too many ideas for it. I think that's one of the strengths of the ADHD brain, is just we're little idea generating machines. But there's a big difference between an idea and a finished product. I went to a talk by another ADHD writer, Catherine Ellison, a little while ago, and she described something called the idea storm, which is really what it feels like. You have all these concepts and thoughts and ideas for stories and video episodes just swirling around in your head, but they're moving so fast and there's so many of them that you can't hold on to one of them long enough to actually turn it into a thing. So what do we do? First, take a deep breath, calm down, recenter yourself. That was quite a lot and it can feel quite overwhelming, but there are things that you can do to sort through the idea storm and be a little bit less overwhelmed by all of your plans. The first step, I think, is recording your ideas. When you're any kind of creative, taking note of any idea that comes to you is a really good habit to get into, because you never know what random thought you had in a McDonald's on a Thursday night is going to turn into the project that you're obsessed with for the next month. It's a good idea to try and record your ideas in as few locations as possible, just so you're not constantly flipping from notebook to notebook to try and find what you've written. I am very bad at this. I just love notebooks. But to try and make things easier for myself, I'm starting to get into the habit of writing everything on loose leaf A4 lined paper, the kind that's pre-hole punched for easy filing. There's a secret reason for that that will be unlocked later in this video. And when I'm on the go, I try and write in the Notes app on my phone, just because my phone is something I always have on me. Some writers will have a special notebook that they just take with them every time they're out of the house, maybe a pocket-sized one. That works for some people, but for me, I generally just find that it's another thing for me to forget to bring to Tesco's. Though I will say your life will generally be easier if you're writing in as fewer different locations as possible. Like I said, I don't do this. I love notebooks. Don't let me make you feel bad about that. Now, let's say you have some ideas recorded. Let's say you have a lot of ideas recorded. How do we deal with this? Next up, categorizing your ideas. This year, I have developed an intense, passionate love affair with the ring binder. Get yourself one of these bad boys. Get yourself some file dividers, and I'm gonna change your life. I don't know why I keep saying I'm gonna change your life. I mean, I probably won't change your life. I don't wanna make false promises. I do just really love ring binders. So how you set up your folder will probably depend on the quantity of papers that you have and the types of papers that you have. This is also a lot easier if you are working on loose leaf A4 refill paper, because that way it's already hole punched and you can remove it from the notebook without having the horrible crushing guilt of taking a page out of a notebook. If you have a lot of different drafts and notes and ideas from a lot of different projects in a lot of different forms, I recommend sorting it all into one folder with different sections for different forms. So you can have a poetry section of your folder, a short story section of your folder, a random notes section of your folder, a free writing section of your folder, just whatever is in your pile contents, make a section for it. Or if you have one big project that you're working on that you have a lot of different notes for, then you can try categorizing things by, say, character notes or draft sections or world building, and have everything in one big folder just for that project. So get your big pile of papers, take a look at them one by one and sort them into their relevant piles. This is something that I always put off doing, but once I actually start doing it, I feel fine. It can be nice to put something on in the background to listen to or watch, because that way it becomes something that you're doing with your hands rather than your main focus. If at any point you come across something that you don't quite know how to categorize, which is pretty likely, you can't always predict the contents of the pile, then either create a new category for it or just have a section that's miscellaneous bits and pieces that you didn't quite know where to put. The reason that we do this is because it makes things easier to find. So when you have a short story from 3 years ago that you suddenly remember and get the urge to redraft, or you figure out the perfect finish for that lyric you wrote one time, then you probably have a better idea of where to find the original piece. Also, I'm aware that this doesn't necessarily help if you write digitally or you are using a lot of different notebooks. If anyone has alternate organizational solutions, you can share them in the comments, or maybe I'll make a broader video at some point for people who don't just live chaotically. We all live chaotically. We have ADHD. That was a redundant statement. So, I know where all my ideas are. I've got them all written down. I can find them in the folder. The idea storm is a little bit less overwhelming, but it's still not completely sorted. I'm looking at all these notes and I'm still just like, how does this become a video? The next step is that you need to collate your ideas. Turn them into something a little bit more video shaped. You can do a very detailed bullet point by bullet point outline, but I find that really difficult. I can't just look at all of my thoughts on a piece of paper and just put them into a logical order easily like some people can. This is where one of my other loves, the mind map, also known as the spider diagram, comes in handy. We had to make mind maps all the time in school. I don't know if that's just a UK thing or if mind map fever has swept the globe yet. I still make them to this day though, because they really help me just sort out what the inside of my brain looks like. The way that you set this up is in the middle of a piece of paper, you write your main concept or idea or title, and then you write notes around it, and then you can draw links between them. I know that's incredibly vague, but there's really no correct way to set up a mind map, and it kind of ends up being different every time. When I was making a mind map for this video, I wrote organization and planning in the center because that's my main theme and my title. And then around the edges, I wrote different questions that I wanted to cover, like, why is this difficult? How can we organize our ideas? And how can we turn those ideas into a thing? I had different pieces of information that I knew I wanted to include, like Catherine Ellison and the idea storm, nonlinear thinking, ring binders and reverse outlines, and the idea storm. So you can write all of those bits down on the page and then link them to the relevant question. I think a mind map works really well for people with ADHD because we tend to be non-linear thinkers and draw connections between things in ways that sometimes don't make sense to other people or even to ourselves at first. But a mind map allows you to visually map out those connections and label them and figure out the links that you're seeing and then sort it into a bit more of an order. Now I've taken myself from idea storm to something a little bit more manageable. The next step is ordering your ideas. From here, you can turn your mind map into a fully bullet pointed outline, but for me, I felt like that would just put off starting doing the actual writing. I made some notes on the mind map about what order it made sense to cover the points in, and then just started on my draft. I'm probably going to end up saying this literally every time organization comes up, but organizing things is supposed to make your life easier. If you know that once you start writing, you'll thank yourself for having a detailed outline so that you know what you're doing next, then go for it. But don't outline your work out of a sense of obligation or a feeling that that's what you should do before you start. Different writers just have different ways of working through this. And I know for me, once I'm at a kind of mind mappy stage, I probably have enough in my head to just start writing things out. One thing that I will say in the favor of outlines is that they can make editing a lot easier. When I was writing this script, I got to a point where I just got stuck. I couldn't figure out what to do next. and I was reading back through what I'd already written to try and figure out what was wrong and just getting confused and overwhelmed. If I'd written an outline before I started, I could have avoided getting stuck by having a more solid grasp of the structure from the beginning. But I also think if I'd spent a lot of time trying to create an outline, I just never would have gotten started on the script. What I did to unstick myself was I went through and created a reverse outline, which is where you read back through what you've done and outline what you already have. I think outlining in this way is really great for people with ADHD because, like I said, we tend to be non-linear thinkers. So instead of trying to create a logical order where you have nothing, you're summarizing what you already have and rearranging. Working this way, creating a first draft and then a reverse outline, means that while you're making your draft, you don't have to worry too much about ordering your thoughts logically, but when it becomes time to edit, it's not too overwhelming. Once I had my reverse outline, I was able to figure out that there were two sections it would have made sense for me to switch, and there was a part that I needed to cut out in order to proceed. And then, yeah, I finished writing my script, which you're listening to now. It's meta. That was a lot of information, so I'm going to give you a quick recap. First things first, record your ideas and try not to do this in too many separate locations. Number 2, categorize your ideas so that when it comes time to develop them, you know where they are. Number 3, collate your ideas into some kind of plan. Something like a mind map can work really well. And number 4, experiment with different methods of outlining and find out what works best for you. Try outlining beforehand or try creating reverse outlines. I've gone through a couple of different things this video. These are just how I like to do things. There's not one perfect way. And if you have something else that works better for you, tell us in the comments. So next week we should be talking about editing, although with this channel, who knows what will happen. I'm also going to leave another little writing prompt at the end of the video if you want to respond to that in the comments or send me an email. That will all be in the description. Thank you very much for joining me this week. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Okay, there we go. Next up, categorizing your ideas.